Good afternoon. I have been harassed every day for over 4 years with no end in sight. In 2012, I announced that I was going to create a series of videos that would look at the way women were represented in video games. Before I ever released a single episode, I was bombarded with an enormous hate campaign. This took many forms. One was racist and misogynist slurs across all my social media accounts, doxing, which is to collect and publicly distribute my personal information, such as my home address and phone number. What else did they do? They took my image or they took my face and photoshopped it onto pornographic images. They printed out photos of me and ejaculated on them and then sent that to me through pictures online. There were massive conspiracy theories created and distributed about me that ranged from that I was a con artist, which also involved them contacting the American IRS and FBI, which I think is kind of funny, actually, to the fact that I might be bleaching my skin to appear more white somehow. They would also send me rape and death threats regularly, as well as to my family and my colleagues, as well as bomb threats and shooting threats to events that I spoke at. Now, one of the things about online harassment, and I think a lot of women don't want to speak about this aspect of it because it makes us appear fearful or it makes us appear weak, but that there's very real trauma in being targeted, whether it is for a short campaign or going on many years. And I think it's really vital that we acknowledge the health ramifications that is taking place across women journalists and women on the internet in general. So one of the things that harassment does is it makes you incredibly vigilant. Some people call it paranoia, but paranoia makes it sound like it is unjust or kind of fabricated. So the vigilance comes in many forms, and for me, the harassment affected my personal and professional life. It affected my ability to trust anyone new in my life. I would be very cautious about where I sat in restaurants because every now and again, a photo of me sitting outside of a restaurant would be posted onto 4chan or Reddit saying, "Anita's here right now." And I would keep the curtains closed in my house so that people can see inside and recognize me and know where I live. It has a lot of emotional ramifications, as well as the stress that builds up over time has a lot of health ramifications. And again, I think a lot of women don't want to talk about it because it makes us seem weak. And it was actually in Sweden when I decided that I was going to start talking about it, because I had a woman come up to me who said, "Well, how does it not affect you?" And I couldn't understand, what do you mean? How does the harassment not affect me? And what happened was that I spent so much time making sure that I put up a public face that was not fearful, that was not scared, that was very, not those things, that I realized it's more important that I talk to other women who are being harassed and that I talk to other folks who could use help and support in this time, as opposed to caring at all what the harassers think about me. So for me, one of the costs of harassment is that you lose your humanity, right? You lose your ability to connect and be fully human. And I think that that is a completely unfair cost to ask of us for doing our jobs. And so over the last year or so, I've decided that I'm tired of this. And I'm fortunate enough to have an amazing team and staff that work with me that are able to monitor my social media or our organization's social media, so I don't have to see it every day. That I now feel slightly more empowered to post on social media on my private accounts, where I spent years not doing that. I didn't take any photos of myself or friends. I didn't talk about the meals that I liked or take pictures of my cat. But now being able to reconnect with other humans in that way and be human has had a huge impact on my ability to reconnect in the world, even with the harassment still maintaining. One of the things that you may have heard about in the US is that we had a presidential election, and it didn't go so well. Yeah, and I can't help but wonder, what is the cost moving forward for us in an environment that is increasingly vitriolic and hateful, that was already increasingly vitriolic and hateful, where it is more important than ever, especially in the US, that journalists and critics speak up against the normalization of white supremacy and misogyny, which we've already seen this idea of like Trump is a totally normal candidate and it's business as usual in the American press, and that's unacceptable. But for us to speak out against this opens us up to enormous risk. So I kind of ask the group, what do we do to support one another? How do we stay human? How do we keep our humanity in this incredibly trying, difficult time? Thank you.